How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Drew Johnson. You can find both of us on X, formerly known as Twitter. I've committed to it now.
You actually used the name, huh?
I did. It's in my writing on DallasBasketball.com. AP style. It's that's the formal way of doing it now. So I've given in and I've adapted to it. But I'm not changing the bird on the on the names. But you can find myself at Dalton_Trigg. You can find my guy DJ at Coach Drew 33. Guys, the Mavs have started out this preseason 0-2. They faced the Minnesota Timberwolves twice in Abu Dhabi as part of the NBA's Global Games initiative, and they lost both games. And, the first game I didn't see as much outrage, or not. I guess it's not really outrage. I didn't see as many negative takes on the timeline with fans talking after that first one. Well, then they lost the second one too, and then I started seeing more of that. And I'm thinking, I get it. You're coming off one of the most disappointing seasons that the Mavs have had in a while. They went to the Western Conference Finals in 2022, and then coming off of that, you lost Jalen Brunson, mediocre for most of the season, traded for Kyrie, had injury issues, lack of depth, and then things just plummeted toward the end of the year. So, and the Mavs missed the playoffs for the first time since Luka's rookie year in 2018-19. So I get it. Coming back from that, you'd like to see your team get in the win column. But I think there needs to be an emphasis here, DJ, that, the final result of these preseason games does not matter. What matters is what you see with your eyes, what guys are doing individually, how they're, meshing together, and Coach Jason Kidd and his staff seeing what they need to see, not just to determine the main rotation, for the main roster, but also deciding, who's going to get some of these two-way spots. They have one two-way spot remaining right now. We had our guy Jelly Walker on the pod earlier this offseason, and he was talking about how he is hoping to get that final two-way spot. And you never know. I mean, another one could open up. A guy like AJ Lawson, Mike Miles Jr., they have two of those now, but that might not be the case by the time the season opener rolls around. So it's a lot of process. It's like a long process in preseason. So it's not really about wins and losses, even though you'd love to win anytime you can. It's more about, what are these guys doing in the minutes they're getting, and especially the rookies against the first time they've ever had against real NBA talent. And we'll start with Dereck Lively, your guy. You've been pining for him since around this time last year, or close to it. And talk about throwing a guy into the deep end and telling him to sink or swim. His first real NBA action against real NBA competition, and he's going up against a front court duo of Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert. So it's welcome to the league, Dereck Lively. You are officially here. And he did well. I mean, look, the numbers were not eye-popping, but, through two games, he had, I believe, 4 or 5 blocks. And really, he altered more shots than that. We talked about it before we came on here. Even if he wasn't grabbing a rebound, he was boxing out or fighting enough for a rebound with Gobert or whoever was there that it allowed another Maverick to come up with a rebound. And, especially that second game, the Mavs actually ended up out-rebounding the Timberwolves 51-46, which is crazy in my opinion. The Wolves
just give into their front court,
right. The Wolves should be blowing the Mavs away in that category. So I thought that was a really impressive sign. But, what are your initial takeaways from these first two preseason games we've seen from Dereck Lively specifically?
Obviously he brings to the table what we predicted he would. He's very good on the glass. He's very good as far as a shot blocker and shot alterer is concerned. he does a lot of things that don't show up on the stat sheet. Like he's very disruptive on the defensive end. It's very long. Any kind of post entry passes, he's able to get his hands on. He'll even disrupt pick and roll passes that were not exactly his man that was screening. He's still able to disrupt that out of help, which, that takes tremendous length and athleticism. So he has all that down. The concerns are what the concerns are that we thought would arise, and that's strength. He got bodied by Gobert a couple times. There was one play in particular that I think you're probably thinking of as well, whenever he got pushed to the side and dunked on. That wasn't good.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a welcome to the league moment. The guy's a rookie. The guy hasn't spent a whole season in the weight room yet. Okay. There is a lot to be excited about with him. I think I'm still on the Dereck Lively bandwagon. So,
oh yeah. I think he's going to be great. And while, after those games over there, our guy, Grant Afseth, DallasBasketball.com, he's in Abu Dhabi. He's now in Madrid waiting on this game the Mavs are going to play against Real Madrid. A Luka Doncic homecoming that we'll get into here a little bit later. But when he was in Abu Dhabi after those games, he talked with Rudy Gobert and Karl-Anthony Towns. And the talk with Gobert was interesting because he had, for a guy who hadn't seen much of Lively, he was very complimentary of him. And he, pointed to the fact that the Mavs hired Alex Jensen. I think I said that. Yeah, Alex Jensen. He used to be an assistant coach for the Utah Jazz, and he played a big role in Gobert's development while he was in Utah. And so that's one of the main reasons that the Mavs, hired him this past offseason, is so that he could play a similar role in Lively's development going forward. And that's one of the exciting things. It's like, you have a guy who helped Gobert become Gobert, 3-time defensive player of the year. He's tremendous on that side of the court. And what makes it so exciting is that you also have the offensive versatility that you're adding with Lively too, that Gobert doesn't have. So, if you can get a good mixture of what Gobert brings to the floor defensively paired with, what Lively can do offensively. And we talked about it with Legends coach Jordan Sears. He said he's shown that Lively has shown the ability to shoot all throughout the summer as well. If that can translate over, you've really got something. And then Karl-Anthony Towns, he was asked about, his thoughts on Lively too. And he said, I think he's extremely athletic. The way I've seen him on the court, he's willing to learn and has a great attitude. So I think Dallas has a good one there. So nothing but high praise from the great front court that Minnesota has. So really good stuff. I thought, all things considered, he did well. And again, I mean, I'm not jumping to conclusions about the Mavs losing preseason. I could care less about the final score of a preseason game. It's just dumb. I mean, if you go back to the year, I think it was the 2006, 2007 season, and we won't talk about how that one ended in the playoffs because nothing of significance happened that year. But anyway, in the preseason that year, the Mavs started out 0-4, and then they also started out the regular season 0-4, and they ended up going 67-15 that season. So, I mean, it doesn't matter. This is about feeling things out, coaches getting their rotations and strategies in line. And then the biggest thing, as Jason Kidd pointed out the other day too, is like you're trying to get out of these exhibition games without any kind of injuries. So all of that's the biggest stuff here. And I'm thrilled with what we've seen so far. Moving on from Lively, another big positive for the Mavs, in my opinion, has been the play of Jaden Hardy, coming off a really promising rookie year. Didn't get to play a lot during the first half of the year when he was with the Legends more than anything else. And then at the end of the year, when injuries and stuff started piling up, he really poured it on for him. So he put in a hard offseason of work, and he's looking for a great sophomore year. And he started out pretty good in preseason play. I mean, 13 points in the first game. He led the team with 22 points in that second game, and had like a team high 8 rebounds, I think, which is part of that. What I was saying, with Lively taking up so much attention, that gave him the opportunity to grab some of those boards. So that was good to see. Kyrie was out for that second game, and so Hardy filled in at the 2 spot. And, I like some of the stuff we've seen from him so far. So with that said, I'll ask you the same thing I did about Lively. What did you think about Hardy's performance through these first 2 games? And also, I mean, what do you think this means as far as the Tim Hardaway Jr. issue? How pressing is that, for the Mavs to get something figured out so there isn't such a logjam at shooting guard?
Well, I'll go ahead and start off with that Tim Hardaway Jr. thing. I was wanting us to, hopefully get something for him last year. I mean, I made that pretty well known. I got some flack in a few of our circles, but that's something that I stand by, and my reasoning for that is A, there is a log jam. B, I believe Tim Hardaway Jr. has some value that we can capitalize on, and C, I think that Hardy is probably a better long-term solution. And the reason that I say that is we've already seen the growth of Hardy, not just in his game, but in his body. He's put on a lot of muscle. The guy's really bulked up. I think that's another reason why he was.
He really has. He looks good.
He looks like an NBA player now. And I think that's another reason why he's had that success on the glass that we've seen. There's some questions about his efficiency, and I'm not really worried about that because we were asking him to do things that he wouldn't normally be doing in a big time regular season game or in the playoffs. Okay. He is going to fill a spot. He is going to serve a purpose, but he is not going to be the person that we rely on to win basketball games. People need to stop looking at Hardy from that guy, at least for right now. Right now, he serves a role, and that's the big thing for him. And I think that, the more time that he gets out there, the better that he will be. And again, it's a preseason game. I don't put much stock in anything that I see in a preseason game ever. I mean, for God's sake, Gobert was out there throwing behind the back passes. So I mean, it's not really anything that we need to be worried about. We need to look at the positives. This is not the time to start worrying. I think there's a lot of things that we can be excited about.
Well, another thing with Hardy too, it's like, yeah, he might have these streaky moments, but you look at last season, he played 48 games for the Mavs, and there were some times where he was, pretty streaky. But even with those streaky moments, he ended up shooting 44% from the field and over 40% from 3, which is better than Hardaway. So, right. I mean, if you're going to have a high volume guy, if you're going to have a chucker, so to speak, who has streaky moments.
I hate that terminology, but yeah.
If you're going to have a guy like that, I mean, it makes more sense to go with the 21-year-old versus the 30-year-old,
right?
Who has had some injury issues. And, I mean, look, Tim Hardaway Jr. is a pro's pro. I mean, he has been nothing. He said nothing but the right things since he's been in Dallas, and he's seems to have been willing to accept whether he starts or comes off the bench and all that stuff. But, during media day, when he did his press conference, I kind of got the feeling, and he still said all the right things, but just I kind of got the feeling from him that he is just fatigued. He's tired of all this trade rumor drama, that's gone on for I don't know what happened there. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, let me redo that.
Okay.
So he's tired of all these trade rumors that have been going on for the last couple of years. And, there's just such a logjam at shooting guard minutes now because you got Tim Hardaway Jr., you got Jaden Hardy, who is pushing hard, for Kidd. And like, he's giving Kidd so many reasons to give him more minutes. You
Mhm.
just signed Seth Curry for his third stint in Dallas, and he's one of the best 3-point shooters of all time. So, I mean, you got to try to find some minutes for him.
Have to.
And then you have Josh Green, who is
He
another
looked
young
good.
player.
He
Yeah.
looked good in these 2 preseason games too. I mean, he had a couple threes. Like, I mean, he's growing too. So we've got some decisions to make.
Yeah, I mean, you've got guys that aren't just young, but they've shown that they're capable. So, I mean, the Mavs just need to lean into that and give those guys those bigger roles. And then, like you said, Hardaway, he still produces at a high enough level, even though, most people might think that he's overpaid. But based on when he signed that contract that he's on, he's making $17.8 million, I think, this year, and then like $16 million next year because it's a descending salary contract. For a guy that averages 15 points per game and shoots like 38% from three, that's not terrible. I mean, there's a team out there that would take that kind of production, from like a 6-man role type of shooting guard.
Yeah,
So
there's no doubt he could help people. My thing with Hardy over him right now is Hardy is still improving. Hardy is still growing. And also, Hardy has some intangibles that Tim just doesn't have. Hardy has the ability to attack the basket. Hardy is developing as a pretty decent defender, and Hardy is also developing as a pretty good rebounder for a guard, as we just saw. So Hardy's just more multidimensional. It's nothing against Tim. Tim's very serviceable in what he does, and he can help somebody. But I think for our particular situation, we need to look at capitalizing on the value that he still has in the trade market and give Hardy the reins, or at least give Hardy those minutes, rather.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what they do with that too, because, before, when the Mavs drafted Lively, for example, they knew what kind of potential he had, and they were excited about that. But, they were also, from the feel I got from everybody, within the organization and everything, there was a feel that, okay, he has a bunch of potential, but he's probably not ready, to start from day one. And I feel like Lively kind of got that sense too, because when we talked to him, he was like, look, that, I have that circled on my board to start for the Mavs, but I haven't earned that yet. And, all that stuff he was talking about. Now it's like a completely different feel that you get from everybody, around the Mavs. It's like, okay, well, he has shown that he can live in the weight room. He's put on muscle. He's learning quickly. Tyson Chandler said that he's like a sponge. Like, you just you tell him something once to correct, and he does it the very next time. It's not like something that you have to just harp on the kid for weeks and weeks. He catches on quickly. He applies what he did wrong, and gets those changes put in. And I think all of the coaches have seen that. I think the Mavs are more optimistic about, okay, this guy could start from day one. And if that's the case, the two biggest trades or hypothetical trades that I've had for Tim Hardaway Jr. throughout the past 2-3 months involved the Hawks. If they end up trading for Pascal Siakam, the most logical piece going back to Toronto would be Clint Capella. And, the Raptors, since they have Pirtle, they don't have any use for Capella. They already have a starting center. So at the time, that made more sense in my opinion. You send Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Raptors in a 3-way trade where the Hawks get Siakam, Raptors get Tim Hardaway Jr., Mavs get Clint Capella. And then you start Clint Capella for a stopgap center while Lively doesn't have all the pressure on him coming off the bench. So that was the first one. And then the other one, it doesn't really solve any of your shooting guard logjam issues, sending Hardaway to the Pacers for Buddy Hield, who they haven't been able to work out a contract extension. And, the last report I saw from Shams a few weeks ago said that they were working on potential trades to get him out of Indiana. So that was the other one. Now that would make some sense for the Mavs just to have another elite shooting option. But I mean, you don't really want to you don't really want to pay a guy big money at that position when you have a guy like Hardy who's progressing the same, the way he is at such a fast pace. So, I'm not exactly sure what route the Mavs need to go here. Now, ideally, if you could get another small forward or even, a power forward type, it's not going to happen. But like with Toronto, OG Anunoby, he could be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season as well, like Pascal Siakam. So I mean, if they can't work something out there, if the Mavs could do something to get him in Dallas, I think that would fit too. I'm not exactly sure, what works now for a Tim Hardaway Jr. trade, and that might be the predicament that the Mavs are finding for themselves. It's like, okay, we know there's a logjam. We probably need to do something with Tim, but it's like, what's out there? What's the right fit? Because now you're thinking Lively can start from day one. Do we really want to go out and get another, starting center and move him back and potentially, stunt his growth now that we've seen what he can do and how fast he can progress? Or do we try and go and, get another position that's out there? So,
well, I'll tell you what, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I mean, I don't think it would necessarily be a bad thing to bring in another post player just to give someone for Lively to compete with. Ain't nothing wrong with competition in practice. Trust me on this. That's how you develop people, is through competition every single day. They make each other better. And then you just pick the best one. It's really easy. So I don't really have a problem with getting another post player to potentially back up Lively. Another thing I'd really like to look at is, what's the value of Tim Hardaway Jr. as far as draft picks are concerned? What can we get as far as picks are concerned? Because if there is a currency in the NBA that is always clicking, it's draft picks. And you know how I feel about the draft. So
yeah.
At the very least, we can use them, which I'm a huge fan of using them. So
when the Mavs leaned into this last draft the way they did and ended up with 2 first-round picks, I don't know of anybody that was quite as excited as you were.
Yeah, I was so stoked. I was like, yes.
They're finally investing. Well, look, and this, while we're just talking about this popped into my head, but, there was a rumor last season, saying that the Brooklyn Nets might have had some interest in Tim Hardaway Jr. And that's one of the teams right now, that would be able to take him in, just absorb him into their cap space, if I'm not mistaken. So, maybe that's a situation where the Mavs could get some draft capital back. Or, if you want to fortify your forward position, why not trade Tim Hardaway Jr. to the Nets and get Dorian Finney-Smith back? Because, the Nets, they're stacked with small forwards. Like they're having the same issues logjam wise at small forward that the Mavs have at shooting guard right now.
Yeah, let's unclog each other's log jams.
Yeah. Well, help me, help you type of situation. Take back Dorian Finney-Smith, who didn't. I mean, he's a great role player, but he didn't. His efficiency fell off when he went to the Nets because that's the Luka effect, and he's making around what Tim Hardaway Jr. is making for the next 3 seasons, I believe. So. That could work out pretty well. Dorian is a nice fit for Dallas, more so than Brooklyn. Brooklyn needs a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. because, they traded Joe Harris this offseason, who was kind of that volume shooter role type deal. So I could see that working. I really like that. I like that idea almost as much as I do just, having someone absorb him and get some draft capital because – I mean, I don't know. It's one of those situations where people view Tim Hardaway, even though he has good production, most people view him as being overpaid. So I feel like if you are going to get some draft capital for him, it's probably not going to be a first-round pick. It'd probably be like multiple seconds or something like that. So I don't know. I kind of like that idea of swapping 2 guys who are kind of viewed as overpaid based on their recent production and then unclogging the logjam at the shooting guard and small forward position. So yeah, bring back Dorian Finney-Smith.
I'm all for it. I'm all for it.
And then you increase your defensive versatility as well if you're the Mavs. So really like that. So yeah, look, preseason. There's a lot of positives that have come from this. The biggest thing, as Jason Kidd said, is the health aspect of it. You know, you don't want anybody getting hurt during preseason play and starting off the season in a hole. Now, we have a game coming up that's not technically listed on, like, if you go to ESPN and everything, it's not going to show up on the Mavs preseason schedule. But the Mavs have an exhibition game, a preseason game against Real Madrid, which is really cool because, you know, obviously that's where Luka, where the phenomenon of Luka Doncic started. 13 years old, he started playing with Real Madrid. By the time he was 19, he had won a EuroLeague championship and MVP before going to the NBA draft and ending up with the Mavs. So he's coming. It's a homecoming for Luka. Real Madrid and some of the players, you know, they've said some nice things, and you know, the city or Madrid itself has honored Luka ahead of this matchup. So I mean, it's a big deal. It's a really big deal for Luka. I know the results of the game and everything won't matter too much, but just from a standpoint of it being important to Luka, it's a pretty big deal. So, what are your thoughts on the Mavs heading into this matchup? I personally think this is going to be one of those, like, you know, even though it's preseason, they're going to win pretty big. Now, Real Madrid, I don't want to insult Real Madrid. Maybe they come out and, you know, shock the world or whatever, but I expect this one to actually be a pretty big win for the Mavs, and I expect Luka to put on a show for however long he stays out there. But what are your thoughts of, you know, for the Mavs ahead of this Real Madrid matchup?
I think that number one, it's just a really, really fun. It'll be a really fun atmosphere, just because, you know, you get one of Real Madrid's all-time stars back in the building, and you know, Real Madrid has a great culture. They have a great tradition as far as EuroLeague teams are concerned. They're always one of the premier teams in that league. They've had
across the board too, not just basketball.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But we're basketball people, so
yeah.
Yeah, I think number one, first and foremost, it's just going to be a whole lot of fun. From a basketball perspective, I think we're going to get to see a little bit more out of guys like Jelly Walker, people like that who, you know, are still fighting for a spot. Also, I think that I do think it'll probably be a pretty big win, but we should not disrespect Real Madrid because I think they've got some former NBA players on that team. Do they not?
Yes, they do. And I think I'm not going to try to pronounce some of the names on. You know, I'm not going to say I'm a Real Madrid roster expert, but I just know. I know they have talent on that roster to where if the Mavs don't give them the proper respect that they deserve, that, you know, they could make things very uncomfortable for a while for them. But I think, you know, overall across the board, you know, they'll probably give Real Madrid too much to handle throughout the course of 4 quarters. And I think this will be a good chance, you know, for the rookies to kind of have a little bit easier matchup than going against the front court duo of Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert like they did in those first 2 games. This will be, you know, obviously they're good, but they're not quite, you know, Minnesota Timberwolves level good on the defensive end. So it'll be good to see what these guys can do when that level of defense is lowered from what they've been up against now. So,
well, I will say this, you know, yeah, it's going to be different in terms of athleticism. Obviously, Minnesota is going to have the edge there. But physicality, I'm not so sure. I mean, we saw some things happen in this past year's World Cup that suggest that athleticism isn't everything. You've got to have strength in what you do, especially down there on the boards. You got to have footwork. fundamentals, these things matter. And if there's one thing that these European guys can do, it's fundamentals and strength and footwork.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
where a lot of people got into trouble in the World Cup with these guys, So
Germany is the biggest, example of all that. I mean, they've got a couple guys on there. I mean, they've got NBA talent on that roster, but I don't think anybody was expecting a Germany versus Serbia, and especially Serbia without Nikola Jokic. I don't think anybody was expecting that World Cup final matchup.
But it was wonderful. I mean, it was just a giant beef fest, like people just slamming into people. It's just old backyard dad basketball. So, I mean, and it works. It does work. We've seen it. We've seen it at all levels. I mean, in college, I'm going to nerd out here really quick, but at the college level a few years ago, there was a guy that played at North Carolina called Luke May, and he was literally dad basketball extraordinaire. And he torched Kentucky, who had a whole bunch of NBA guys. So, I mean, it just goes to show that throwback form of basketball, it does work. So there needs to be some respect there.
I agree. I agree 100%. And then after this happens, after this big Luka homecoming game, the Mavs will head back home, and then they'll have about a week off until they finish up the preseason. They have one more preseason game after this one against Real Madrid on Tuesday, and it'll be against the Detroit Pistons at American Airlines Center. So they'll get to go home and stay home until opening night, and then even on opening night, they won't have to travel too far because they're opening in San Antonio against Victor Wembanyama and the San Antonio Spurs. So that is going to be a very intriguing opening game for the season that we're going to be excited about it, but there's going to be a lot of national eyes on that too, or worldwide. People are going to be watching that one with a bunch of intrigue. So that'll be good. I fully expect the Mavs to win that game based on, their overall roster talent versus the Spurs. But when you have Victor Wembanyama and Coach Pop,
you just don't know. I mean, Wembanyama, or however you say his name, Wemby, we'll just call him that so I'm not offending anybody. Wemby has so much upward trajectory as far as potential is concerned. It's insane. Now, we saw in Summer League, the physicality and the athleticism, it could bother him at times. But to have that type of skill, that type of mobility at that length and that height is unprecedented. We've never seen anything like it. The closest thing we've ever seen to it was a guy named Ralph Sampson way back in the day, who was also 7'4", who could do all these different things. But unfortunately, Ralph got hurt, and so we never really saw him at his full capabilities.
Yeah.
This guy is literally the limit. Now, he's not going to be, prime Wemby whenever we play him at the beginning of the year, but it's still going to be very interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super excited for it. It's crazy that, this entire offseason has flown by the way it has, and it was a very eventful offseason too. I mean, a lot of stuff happened. I guess that helped it fly by. And then, also we had the World Cup, and we had Dirk's Hall of Fame ceremony, and, all this other stuff that helped it go by quickly. And now here we are, the season's about to get ramped up, and it's going to be a marathon until about we're gonna say June of next year, just to put good vibes out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
things things can mesh, and I think the Mavs are going to have a better year this year than what they did last year for sure. I mean, I know people are kind of upset with the outcome of these first two preseason games, but I really think you're going to see a different Mavs team come opening night. There is a thing, historically, teams have a hard time getting off to a hard start. I mean, off to a fast start after they've had a long, hard overseas trip in preseason, like the Mavs have had with Abu Dhabi and now Madrid. And we saw it several seasons back. I think it was Luka's second year, maybe, when they played in China. And then when they got back, they started off the season kind of sluggish. So It just depends. I mean, you never know what's going to happen there. If they start off a little bit slow this year, people will blame the trip more than anything else. I just don't think that's going to happen given their opening schedule. I think they're going to get off to a good start for the first time in the Jason Kidd era. And I think they're going to rebound from what, the disappointment that they had last year. And, for Jason Kidd's sake, for he needs to hope that is the case, because the honeymoon phase is over right now. He had the first year where they were amazing and went to the Western Conference Finals. Then you lose Jalen Brunson and made a couple of questionable roster moves, getting JaVale McGee and Christian Wood, and we all know how all that stuff played out. And now you got Kyrie. You've upgraded the roster around him and Luka. There's no excuses now. You got to go out there and get it done. So we'll see how it goes. But guys, we appreciate y'all coming in and listening to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. Be sure to stay tuned in the coming weeks, because we got some really fun stuff lined up. Some potential really cool Mavs guests. There should be coming on here, and we'll have some interesting conversations. Mavs preview. Season preview pod with them. We also have some new t-shirts on the way as well. A Dereck Hall of Fame t-shirt design where all the proceeds are going to go directly to the Dirk Nowitzki Foundation. I have finished up the design for that one. It's been completely finalized. Now it's just a matter of actually getting the shirts and taking the orders and everything, and we'll be doing that before the season gets underway. Also have some DallasBasketball.com t-shirts as well that'll be here within the next week. DJ, I'll be sending you one of these, and some of our other DallasBasketball.com staffers. So be on the lookout for that. And be sure to go like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Let's keep the train rolling over there. It's been an incredible offseason for the YouTube channel, and I appreciate every one of you guys for going and doing that. And leave us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you do so, you're throwing your name in the hat to potentially win a free t-shirt or any other kind of giveaways we do in the future. If you put your social media at when you leave a review on Apple Podcasts, anytime we do have some sort of giveaway, all of those names on the review deal are put into the same pot, so to speak, and we pick randomly to see if you win that giveaway. So be sure to do that. Guys, we appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day and have a great week. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.